are thrilled. But you know what? The Republicans are not very happy right now. And they say his latest initiative to go ahead and raise taxes on rich people, on financial institutions in order to pay for new tax breaks, more income for the middle class, they say that is a non-starter. It's not going anywhere.
That's right. There were, of course, a lot of moments where everybody was able to stand and applause. At one point, he said, if you need something done, hire a veteran. A lot of his messages about the fighting men and women in this country were applauded. He pointed out that for the first time since 9/11, the combat mission in Afghanistan is over. He noted that 6 years ago, there were nearly 180,000 American troops serving in Iraq and Afghanistan, and today fewer than 15,000 remain.
Yeah, but he also seemed to suggest that the U.S. is really winning on this war on terrorism. Here, I think he was on more questionable ground, to be sure, because it looks right now that ISIS in Iraq and Syria, still very powerful. Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula in Yemen, still very powerful. And these other Al-Qaeda groups, whether going forward in Somalia or elsewhere in Africa, North Africa, they seem to be very formidable to represent not only a significant threat to people in the Middle East and North Africa, but in Europe and potentially here in the United States as well.
Of course, most of the speech, the body of the speech, was a very progressive, very liberal economic message about trying to help the middle class. He did have some moments where he talked about infrastructure, but generally speaking, the first part of the speech, the first third, I'd say, was about new tax cuts of up to $3,000 per child per year, paid sick leave or paid maternity leave, raising the minimum wage, lowering the cost of community college to zero, a wish list for a progressive president. Getting any of those items through Congress, especially this Congress, is going to be very difficult.
And I think it's fair to say, had he put forward all these new initiatives before the midterm elections, he was afraid to do so because he feared it could hurt Democrats who were up in a tough re-election or election seats. And as a result, he didn't do any of those things before the midterms, but now after the midterms, 2 years to go, he feels emboldened, almost liberated, ready to move on with these new, very progressive or very liberal initiatives.
You can see the president making his way out, schmoozing with people, complimenting their ties, thanking them for their work.
There he is. He's with Steve Israel, the congressman right behind him. Anderson, this is an important night for the president of the United States. The key question now is it going to really make much of a difference given the fact that Republicans have significant majorities in the House and now the Senate?
An important night for the president and for his supporters. The president says the nation has turned the corner on hard times. We're going to play some of the most powerful lines from his address, but I want to go to Van Jones and all our panelists for a quick take. We're obviously going to be bringing you the Republican response in just a few moments, but I want to try to get some quick takes on what you heard. I heard you saying Obama is back.
Obama's back. Obama's back. That is the guy. From 2008, 2012, he's back. First time you ever heard him talk about unions. Again, transgender, bisexual. His base is happy. But the economic message, we're going to help you out now. He moved from the economy strong. It can get better. We want to be more fair. That is the Obama that wins elections. And Republicans are now on the back foot. This is the president in full engagement mode. I haven't heard anything from Republicans. Let's see what they say. But that is Barack Obama back.
S.E. Cup, you feel on the back foot?
I don't join Van in that enthusiasm. But I will agree, you know, the criticism of Democrats leading up to the 2014 midterms was that they didn't have a cohesive economic message. And I heard one tonight. It's not one, obviously, I agree with or that Republicans are going to agree with, but it was a more cohesive message. I think Wolf alluded to his comments on terror, and I'm positive those will have struck some Republicans as incredibly off-key. This is an administration that has underestimated ISIS, has said Al-Qaeda's been decimated, has had a very questionable foreign policy, and the world's a very dangerous place right now, and he seemed to take a bit of a victory lap on terror, and I think that's going to strike some Republicans as really untouched.
Jay Carney, you've listened to a lot of these presidents.
Well, I was struck by the end and the sense that he was back, not so much on the economic message, which I knew he would make, and I think he's right on, but that he returned to some of the themes that Americans first heard from him in 2004 and again in 2008 and 2012. And I got a text from a friend who's not a partisan Democrat at all, but who did vote for Obama twice, and he said, that's why I voted for him, what I heard in those last 10 minutes. Now, he was partisan in the sense that the solutions he proposed to the problem were his solution. They were progressive. But the problem is now being diagnosed in the same way by Republicans and Democrats. The economy's growing, but not everybody's sharing in the growth. We need to do something about it. So he's saying, here's my plan, and I think he's not going to want to hear what Republicans are going to offer.
Mike Rogers, what did you hear tonight?
I heard the Colorado speech when he was running for president right after his nomination, and that concerns me because one of the hallmarks of this president is he has very poor relationships in Congress. He had poor relationships with Democrats in Congress, and he had poor relationships with Republicans in Congress. And I thought this speech was an opportunity for him to step up and say, all right, we have some differences, but we have a common goal. How do we improve the middle class? Nobody is saying that's not a good idea. How he gets there, calling for more spending and more programs probably isn't going to excite Republicans. But he did it in the first three quarters of that speech in a very partisan way. And I understand what he was trying to do. He's trying to invoke all those images of 2008. As Van said, problem is it's not 2008. And we have 2 years left, and you have a big majority in both the House and the Senate with Republicans. I think it's a bad way to start if you actually want to accomplish it.
John Case?
It's the first act in this latest round of divided government. And the first big act, you had a very significantly left-of-center speech delivered by a president to a Congress that is now much more right-of-center after the election that just happened a couple of months ago. So they are operating on very different parallel universes, if you will, right now, but it's only the first act. And I think the president was planting his flags. The Republican responses, as we got them during the speech, as Chairman Rogers says, were all, no way, Mr. President. You're ignoring the results of the election. But it is the first act. We'll see how this plays out.
Before I go to you, Gloria, I just want to play one of the moments that obviously is going to get a lot of play from this speech.
America, for all that we have endured, for all the grit and hard work required to come back, for all the tasks that lie ahead, know this. The shadow of crisis has passed, and the state of the union is strong.
And as we wait for the Republican response, Gloria Borger, what did you hear tonight?
Well, this is obviously a president who's been waiting a long time to actually say those words. And I think in looking at him, he looked kind of liberated tonight. Yes. I think he was saying to Washington, I'm over you. OK? I'm telling you what I told you when I first ran to office, which is there is no red America, or there is no blue America. And he said, I'm over this. I'm going to go back to where I was. But I also think he told the Congress there is good news here. I'm not used to hearing that from him. And what I think he's done is deliver a big promissory note to the American people, which is it's going to continue to get better. He put that on the table. If it doesn't, the Democrats could have hell to pay.
There were also lighter moments and some ad-lib moments. Here's one of the lighter moments.
I have no more campaigns to run. My only agenda, I know because I won both of them.
Responding, obviously, Michael, the applause when he said he had no more campaigns to run.
When I read the script before he began his remarks, I said to myself, I wonder if that will be an applause line for some to cheer when he says no more elections. He was very loose tonight. That was self-evident. He struck me as an individual whose party had just taken control of the House and Senate, not someone whose party just got hammered.
I had the exact same thought.
2 months ago. I have to say, I wondered in advance, how is he going to sell his proposal to combat income inequality without sounding as if he's for the redistribution of all wealth? And the answer, I think, is offer very few specifics, because there were more specifics offered in the media in the last 48 hours than there were in the speech on that matter.
And I think that's been an important part of the rollout. And maybe it's because Jay Carney's not over at the White House
anymore. We were too specific back then, right?
Way too specific when Jay was there. But they've been rolling this out to try and give all of their proposals a certain amount of context. So you wouldn't just say, OK, tax increases on the wealthy. Right. Well, to pay for what? To pay for free community college. So we sort of got a lot of that out of the way.
It's hard to oppose it the way he presented it.
I do think on foreign policy.
The big stuff doesn't pass in Washington. You make your proposals in January. The big stuff doesn't pass until hopefully August and September, sometimes up against the government shutdown deadline in October. But if they're actually going to do it the way the Republican leadership says they will do it, through regular order, a regular budget, haven't done that in Washington since Bill Clinton was president, mind you, but they say that's what they're going to do, then the negotiating will take place in late July, August, and September. What the president was doing tonight right, was just laying down his markers and pleasing his base, the Republicans are going to say he's in denial, Anderson, because what they say is look back not just at last November, but the last 6 years. And they say this is a much redder America. 31 Republican governors, post-World War II high in the House, 54 Republican Senate seats, all those state legislative seats. So the Republicans say, yeah, there is a red America.
The thing is, I know that the view is that this is a partisan speech, but I promise you that almost all of those initiatives test 70-30, which is in our world parlance for 70% of the American people.
And you wouldn't be
them.
polling those initiatives,
and
would
it's
you,
possible
with the
that they
White
may
House?
have been polled.
Yeah.
Which is
But
actually the problem.
But here's the thing. What the president did was frame the debate that we're going to have now over the economy, which isn't how do we pull it out of recession, because we're out of recession. It isn't how to grow the economy, because we're growing the economy. It isn't how to cut the deficit, because we're cutting the deficit faster than in history. It's how do we make those benefits felt by average Americans. And so he took a term, I don't think it was the most elegant phrase, but middle-class economics. So it's like, this is my turf. I'm for the middle class.
We are just seconds away from the Republican response. I want to go to Wolf and Pig.
It's going to be a very difficult challenge. It's always a difficult challenge for the Republican response, or if there's a Republican president, for the Democratic response. The president spoke for nearly an hour. Jake, the Republican response is a lot shorter, and it's a different venue, if you will, so it's always a little bit more difficult. Joni Ernst, the senator from Iowa, will be delivering the Republican response.
She's a freshman senator from Iowa, just elected. She is a former pig farmer and is known for turning a blue state red. She is somebody that Republicans feel is a rising star in the party, and they want to show off who she is.